Hi everybody and welcome back to my War Games Hobby channel. Yes, it's finally here, Saga Age of Chivalry, and I've just received mine in the post just yesterday, and I've had a little look through, so I thought I would just go through this new supplement with you, have a quick look, see what it's like, and give you my opinion on what I think of the book, and hopefully it's going to be a very successful supplement to the Saga rules. Over the years, I've played a lot of Saga. I've bought all their books, all their supplements, all the dice, and they've been very popular set of rules. Me and Graham are going to be playing these tomorrow night at the club. We're going to give it a go and see how we get on. In fact, Graham's going to record the game. I'm not going to, because Graham's the expert in recording Saga games. He does it really, really well. So what I'll do is when it is recorded and when he's edited it and published it on his channel, then I will put the link below in a note somewhere so you can have a look at that game. We've only just received the book. We're not going to know what we're doing tomorrow. It's going to be really just a case of having a go, and we're going to make mistakes, no doubt, but we're just going to have a go anyway. We're going to use the English and the French as for our first game, because I think they seem two of the easier boards to use. Graham wants to use the English, so I will use the French. So what I'll do is I'll go through the book quickly, and then I'm going to go through those two factions with you, go through the boards and go through the army lists you can have, just to see what they're like. So let's make a start. So here's the book, Age of Chivalry, usual good hardback book. They're always very good quality. I've never had a problem with that at all. Let's just turn over the pages one by one. There we are, Age of Chivalry. Now the first thing you'll notice is that there are a lot of factions in here. So let's have a look. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Well, in fact, the Wars of the Roses has got two. They've got Lancastrian and the Yorkists. So there are 14. There's also a specialist faction, which I'll cover later, and then the Legends of Chivalry, which I'll also cover later. So there's a good wide variety of factions you can do. The good news is that there's only 2 dice sets needed for these, the red and the blue. Here they are. Right, turn over the page. There we are. It tells you a little bit about the history of the late Middle Ages, War and Peace. It covers, there we are, from 1337, the 100 Years' War begins, and it goes right the way through. I won't read all of those out, but you can see it covers quite a wide period up to, there we are, 1420 to 1434, the Hussite Revolt. So turn over the page, and a little bit more history about, goes on even further, doesn't it, to the War of Burgundian Succession ending in 1482. There's a couple of mentions here of how to use the book, and there's some new equipment. It covers the War of Roses here, the specialists, Legends of Chivalry, it mentions those, and the battle boards over the page again. And here's a list of the complexity we're using. We're going to do English and French, as you can see. So they've got a 1 star, so they should be fairly easy to use. When we've got a bit more experience, we might use one of the more complicated ones, like the Germans are listed as a bit more complex, and the Burgundians and so on, so, and Flemish as well. And here are the 3 sets of dice that they mention again. And there's new equipment. There's horse barding mentioned. I'm not going to go all the way through what all these mean, but there's horse barding, pavises, and pikes. They're the 3 main additions to this supplement. So there's the first faction we're going to be using, the English, which I'm going to be using with Graham. And you can see there's not that many troop types that you can actually have. Your Warlord and your Hearthguard must be dismounted. There's no mounted option for those. And your warriors, you can have them as bowmen, normal foot, or you can have 1 unit which is mounted, and that is the only options you've got. You can have mercenaries, which I'll come to later. So there we are. And then we've got the French. And again there you can see the French units listed that you can have. Clearly the French would have their warlord and their hearth guards mounted, although you don't have to, because in fact the French realised after getting rather badly beaten at Crécy and Poitiers and Agincourt that they're better off maybe dismounting against the English. And so there is that option if they want to. They've got the warriors as well, which can be on horse, and there's no limit on those. They can have pavises, which give them a bit more cover, but they are slower, and they can have the normal just foot. And they can have levy as well, which are crossbow or bowmen. Again, they can have mercenaries. You might, for example, we'll cover that in a minute, but have a Genoese crossbowman, for example, which were at Crécy, and you can have those as a mercenary unit. And then also, later on in the war, you can hear the French ordnance. There's different troop types, which is when later on in the war they did start to change. They realised they needed to change to improve their army, and so if you're on the late 100 Years' War, then you'd use this list instead. So I'll just go through quickly the others. There's the free companies, which I know Graham's got, and he'll be happy to use them. He'll be using his Hawkwood, which again I'll cover later. He is mentioned in the lists. And there we are, the Burgundians. Again, two types of Burgundians, the early war and late war. The Scots, which I know Graham's got, which would include pikemen. Interestingly enough, with these, they've got the Scots that fought in the United Kingdom, if you like, and then the ones that fought across in France. Some Scots did fight in France with the French against the English, and there are different lists there. The pikes basically were used in the homeland, but they weren't used when they went across to France, seemingly. There's the Flemish. I haven't looked at most of these. I'm just running through them very quickly with you, just so you can see what they are. There's the Bretons. I'm going to have to study each of these factions in more depth. So I thought today I would just go through the two that we're going to be using, the English and the French. Castilians. There's the Swiss. That's interesting, isn't it? Look. The Swiss don't have a warlord or any hearth guard. They just have warriors and levies. That's going to be interesting. I don't know how that's going to work, but I'm sure it'll be fun to try. Then we got the Germans. Carry on, the Hussites. This is going to be interesting. I'm very tempted to get some Hussite wagons. That'll be something completely different. Don't they look great? As I say, that's something which I'll work on. Maybe that could be my next project. I'm not sure yet. We'll have to see. But certainly that does appeal somehow to me. And there's the Hussites again. Then the Condottieri, which is obviously the Italian states that were very much fighting each other for many, many years. There's the Papal states, the Milan, and there's others as well over the page. There we are. That's the Kingdom of Naples, Venice, and so on. So there we are. There's the 5 that you can have. I believe Graham has already got Naples, so he'll be looking at those. Or is it Florentine? I can't remember. Anyway, he'll be doing those very soon, I am sure. And there's a bit more on the Condottieri. And then the War of the Roses, which of course covers Lancastrians and Yorkists. It's in fact, they are the same. I didn't realise that. I thought there might be separate lists, but they're not. They're the same. Seemingly, I haven't really looked at that very much. As you can tell, I've only just got the book, so I don't know what I'm doing. Right, specialists. Now, they've listed these separately. These are basically mercenaries. And you can see, for example, the English archers are mentioned here. Obviously, if you've got an English army, you wouldn't have those. But if you were going to do Burgundian army, for example, you might well have English art. In fact, it tells you here where they can be used. So the English warband, they can be used in that. This profile can represent Welsh bowmen, yeah, who enjoyed a reputation of excellence even among the English archers. They can be used, there we are, with Flemish allies, the armies of the Duke of Burgundy as part of a free company, or even in the Italian wars, of course, as well, with Hawkwood. What else they got here? So here's the Genoese crossbowmen, so they can be used by the French and other. I don't think the English ever used them, but they can be used by the French. So if you look through there, there's the various other mercenaries that you can have. There's quite a wide variety, and on each one it tells you which factions you can use them with. So quite a variety there. And then we have the legends of chivalry. So this is interesting because again, you can use these characters, and rather than list them with each army, because sometimes the characters fought for various armies. For example, let's have a look through. Well, obviously there's Joan of Arc there, which should obviously only be with the French. But if you look through, there we are, here's John Hawkwood. And so Hawkwood is a legendary warlord who replaces your warlord for 1 point. He can join an English, free companies or condottieri. That's Milan, Florence or the Papal States warband, and has the following characteristics. So I won't go through those because we're not going to be doing those tomorrow, but there we are. There's quite a variety of heroes that you can have. So there we go. Oh, there's John the Blind. I think that's another one that Graham's got. And that's it. So there's the book. So what I want to do now is I'll go through the English board. Now, when you pick it, let's say you did a 4-point army, for example. I think that the English should have, say, a couple of units of warrior longbow. Why wouldn't you? And then the other units, looking at the English list that you can have Hearth Guards, which would be your dismounted knights, or you could have them as warriors, which would be like billmen instead. So instead of having a unit of 4 Hearth Guards, you could have a unit of 8 warriors, which would be the billmen. You can give up to 1 unit, as I mentioned earlier, I think 1 unit of horse. But the warlords and the Hearth Guards are all dismounted. You can't mount those. So if you're looking at the English board, you can see here, let's start from the top left. Oh no, let's go right to the top. We've got men-at-arms is the activation of hero or Hearth Guards. Then you've got longbowmen and sergeants, activate a unit of warriors or mercenaries. And then lastly, you've got wall of arrows. So because there's no levy, that's replaced by a wall of arrows, which is an activation. You activate up to 2 non-mercenary units to shoot. So if you've got 2 units of longbow, which you've got to have at least 2 units of longbow in any English army, then for 1 dice you can shoot them, which is going to be really, really used a lot. I think Graham's going to love that tomorrow. They must choose different targets. That's interesting, but that's good. I think that's a very good idea. And then next one along is combat bonus, which is a normal combat bonus. You gain 1 attack dice or defense dice, and 2 if you use a rare dice. And then the activation pool, which is no different all the way across all the factions, I believe, where you take 2 available dice if you use a rare dice and roll them and to see what you get. Right, so starting on the top left-hand corner, Du Amon Droit. Hope I said that correctly. So this is 2 dice. This is 2 common dice. And it's a melee or shooting reaction. So units within S of a friendly hero or Hearth Guard unit, they gain 2 defense dice and increase their unit's armor by 1. So yeah, that looks quite nifty. Once the French get near to the English, you want to have two. It does cost two dice, but they are two common dice, and as long as they're near a Hearthguard unit or the Warlord, then they gain two defense dice and increased armor by one. So that's quite powerful. This may be a reason why you would have Hearthguard instead of other warriors, because that means you can spread out. You can have, say, for example, a Warlord and two units of Hearthguard. Then the longbow's always going to be near one of those units, and that's what you would give them to, because I'm sure that it's the longbow units that are going to be targeted by the French. Next one down is Hearse or Hearse. I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but this is a melee activation. So units within S of another friendly unit, so it doesn't matter what they are as long as it's another unit, they gain 3 attack dice or 3 defense dice. And if you use a rare dice, it's 5. Wow, that's going to be good. So again, I think you would probably use that if French knights were attacking a unit of longbowmen, they'd probably want to use 3 or 5 defense dice. That would probably save them. Go down the next one, which is Loose, which is an activation. Activate up to 2 units equipped with bows for a shooting attack range of 2 times L. Wow, that's really good. Okay, so interesting though, they just read on, they must choose different targets like the activation above. If the target of the shooting attack is more than M away, the armor is increased, the target's armor, that is increased by 1. Okay, so that's good. It still means 1 dice you can activate 2 units to fire at an incredibly long range, but understandably the effect isn't quite as good as if they were closer. But that's still a very powerful, it's 1 dice to fire 2 units again. So there's going to be a lot of arrows coming my way tomorrow, I think. And then going down to the next one, Grueling Advance. This is an orders activation. Well, while I talk about that, I do wish that they'd put on these boards the 2 orders at the top next to each other. So this has got another orders, and then in a minute it's got Brothers of Arms, which is orders and orders reaction. They mixed them all up, and I don't know why they do that. It'd be much easier if they had the orders at the top of the board, for example, and then maybe movement ones, and then maybe shooty ones, and then maybe melee ones. So they're in some sort of order. You don't have to keep looking for them because every board is different. So let's look at Grueling Advance. This is an orders activation, so this has to be declared before you do anything else. Place an M measuring stick entirely within S of one of your units of warriors equipped with bows. Okay, somewhere that contains no figures. Right, the units that cross this measuring stick during a movement or charge activation suffer a fatigue, and at the start of the turn of your next turn you remove the stick. So you can put that down and it stays there the whole time through your move and your opponent's move. And I suppose that represents stakes, doesn't it? I've got some stakes somewhere. What I'll have to do is to make up a measuring stick, an M measuring stick, and place that down rather than use the actual measuring stick, which I'm sure I'm going to be needing. But that's interesting. I think that does represent stakes, and I like that. It's not going to cause any casualties on the attacking enemy, but it's going to cause a fatigue, which is really useful. Interesting enough, it'll be on anything as well. It can be even infantry charging through, so it's not just aimed at mounted. Next, we've got Rain of Arrows, which is a shooting activation. If your unit is within M of the target of your shooting attack, you get a +1 bonus to all your attack dice. Oh wow. Otherwise, so in other words, if it's longer than M, you still get 2 attack dice. So that's good. So that in combination, if you do Loose, where you shoot 2 units, one of those units you can activate, and they either get the 2 extra attack dice. So if you've got a unit of 8 longbow firing, normally it'd be 4, it becomes 6. Or if they were within M, you still get only 4. You don't get 6 then, but you get that +1 bonus to your attack dice. So that's a nice one. And that's a a common or uncommon dice. Next, with all haste, top right hand corner, activation, choose one of your units without ranged weapons. Okay, so this is your Hearthguard or your normal warriors. Activate any number of friendly units within S of this unit to move. Oh, that's interesting. If you use a rare dice, this activation generates no fatigue. Okay. So yeah, so as long as you've got all your units within S of another unit, then activate a number of friendly units within any number of friendly. I'd imagine that would include itself as well, because any unit would normally include itself in that. So that means you can move a lot of units with just one dice. And that is an uncommon dice. And if you use the rare, you don't get activation. You don't get fatigue. Although it's your first move anyway, you wouldn't anyway, would you? But if it's your second move, you can move all your troops once and then you can move them a second time with that. Those that were within S, that is. So it's quite useful. Hail of Arrows is next, which is another shooting activation. Place a fatigue on your unit to inflict a fatigue on the target of your shooting. Okay, if you use a rare, you gain 2 attack dice. Now that's fine if you use the rare. If you used the uncommon dice, you're gaining a fatigue to give an enemy a fatigue. I'm not sure you'd use that often, to be perfectly honest. If you've got a spare rare dice, then maybe it's worth doing, but otherwise I can't see the point of that, unless you're trying to kill a warlord and you really want to make sure that you get at least 1 fatigue on him. That if it costs you a fatigue, it doesn't matter. So I think that won't be used that much myself, but we'll see. Then we've got St. George, which is a 2 dice activation. So this is a common dice and a rare dice. Activate a unit without ranged weapons. Yeah, so this is your Hearthguard again, for a charge. It gets a +1 bonus to all its attack and defense dice during the ensuing melee. Oh wow, that is very powerful, isn't it? Yes, it does cost 2 dice, but boy, is that going to be effective if you time it right. I like that. Expensive, but very powerful. Next down, we've got Brothers in Arms, orders and orders reaction. So this has to be done at the beginning of the move before you do anything else. So this removes all fatigues from one of your non-mercenary units and place them on 1 or more friendly units within S. The unit keeps any fatigues it can't move. Okay, well that's a bit of an unusual one. So you're just spreading out your fatigues. I suppose if it's your warlord and he's got a couple of fatigues, you want to charge him in to attack something, and you want to remove those fatigues, then that's the way of doing it. It does mean that if a warlord, say for example, had 3 fatigues, it could remove 2 of them, or 3 of them, or all 3, or if you wanted to. Yeah, so I mean that could be quite useful in certain circumstances, although I can't see it being used a great deal. And it is only a common dice anyway, so it's quite a cheap thing to do. And lastly, we got Mauls, which is an activation. So activate a unit of warriors with bows for a charge. Oh, that's interesting. Well, of course, the bowmen did fight a lot of hand-to-hand, especially once the enemy have reached their lines. They weren't worried about getting stuck in, were they? In the ensuing melee, each time you use one of the enemy's units' fatigues, you gain 2 attack dice and 2 defense dice. Oh wow, yeah, that is good. That really makes bowmen quite effective, doesn't it? The enemy have to have a fatigue, of course. If they haven't got any, then you're not going to be able to use that. But if they got 1 fatigue, especially if they cross those stakes on their way to your bowman, you'll be able to get 2 attack dice and 2 defense dice for using that, which is quite handy. So yeah, a number of good things on the English board there. We'll just have to see how they pan out tomorrow when I play Graham. I'm sure he'll be peppering me with arrows. So now let's look at the French board. The first one is feat of arms, melee or shooting. Okay, so add an automatic hit to the hits you inflict. 2 if you use a rare. Okay, so it's any one of the dice that you roll. So you can be used in either a melee, or it can be used for shooting if you've got a unit of levy crossbow. So that's quite handy. You will always get an automatic hit. And they say if you use a rare, you get 2. So if you're, that could be useful at certain times. If you're trying to kill a warlord, for example, and you've got a rare dice, and you're going to get 2 automatic hits. Of course, you can still try and save them, of course, but you know they are 2 hits, so that's quite handy. And it is just 1 dice, and it's anything from a common, an uncommon, or a rare dice. The next one is Panoply, which is for Hearthguard unit. It's melee only. Another good reason why you should have Hearthguards and not warriors. You can re-roll all your attack and defense dice which score 1s, or 1s and 2s if your unit has taken at least 1 casualty since the start of the game. Okay, so if the unit's down to 3 men, it started off at 4, then you can use that any time. Yeah, it's got to have taken a casualty. So that, yeah, can be useful once the French get stuck in. That might be used. It's only 1 dice. It's an uncommon dice, so that should be good. Next we've got Knighthood. Orders. This is an orders or orders reaction. Choose a friendly non-mercenary hero. Until the end of the turn, each time this hero takes part in a melee or a shooting attack, they automatically cancel a number of hits equal to their resilience. Oh right, so if you've got resilience 1, you're going to cancel until the end of the turn. For if they're shot at or in melee, they will automatically cancel a hit. So that's good. And it's only 1 dice. It's a common or uncommon. Tenacity is next, melee or shooting reaction. Again, they're going to be using this, I'm sure, with all these longbows shooting at them. Gain 2 defense dice. Well, that's really handy. Again, it's any dice. So at the end of the melee or shooting attack, if your unit hasn't taken any casualties, take 1 of your available Saga dice. 2 if you used a rare, and roll it and place it on your board. Oh, I see. So you not only do you get 2 defense dice, but you get to roll 1 or 2 dice and put them on your board. Oh, okay, that's quite useful. It's a cheap one as well. You can use a common dice. If you use the rare, though, you do to get those get 2 dice back. Hopefully, you'll roll another rare. So that's an interesting one. Yep. Next one, Flying Wedge. This is an activation. It costs 2 dice. It costs a common dice and a rare dice. Activate up to 3 units for a charge. All right, I can see now why it takes 2 dice. They each get 3 bonus attack dice in the ensuing melee. Oh, that's really powerful, isn't it? Yeah, although it is 2 dice, if you've got 3 units within charge distance, all 3 of them can charge. So you're not using other dice to make them charge. You just use those 2 dice, and you're going to get each 3 bonus attack dice. Wow, that's really powerful. I think it is anyway. I'll be using that a bit tomorrow. Next we have Montjoie Saint Denis. It's an activation. Remove all your warlord's fatigues, then activate them for a charge. That generates no fatigue. Interesting. So basically, if your warlord's been in a fight and then he falls back, or the enemy fall back, you can activate that to remove all the fatigues he's got, and then activate him to charge again, and it doesn't add another fatigue. That's quite powerful for the warlord. I like that. Next one, Pledge of Battle, melee. If you're the attacker, your unit suffers 1 less fatigue at the end of a melee. Okay, yeah, okay, it's cheap, it's a common or uncommon, and it just saves you getting a fatigue at the end of the melee. Can be useful. Next, Arm and Armoured. So this is 2 dice, but it is 2 common dice, and it's a melee. Gain 3 attack dice or 3 defense dice, and 4 if a Hearthguard unit. Wow. Okay, so it'd be one or the other. Your opponent must discard 3 attack dice. Oh, that's really quite powerful, isn't it? For 2 dice, though, but it does mean that you're going to get a lot more attacks or defense, and then your opponent will reduce their attack dice by 3. Yeah, that's quite good. I like that. Then full harness, which is an orders activation. So until the start of your next turn, okay, so that's all your turn and your opponent's turn, your Hearthguard units get resilience 1 in melee and resilience 2 against shooting attacks. So that's going to protect them against a longbow fire, isn't it? However, they must make all their moves and charges with a single S measuring stick. Oh right, slows them down quite a bit. Or M if they're mounted on unbarded horses. Well, since I'll be using unbarded horses, it'll be M that I'll be moving. So it does protect the knights from being shot at to a degree. They can still lose figures, but it's going to take some time. They'll just get resilience 2 from shooting and 1 in melee. So that's quite a useful one to have, I think, and it's cheap to use. And the last one is prowess. This is another orders activation. So until the end of the turn, your mounted heroes and Hearthguard units get a bonus of M to their charge distance. Oh, that's handy, yeah. But cannot be activated to move. Oh, right, okay. So as long as you don't want to move them, as long as you're within charge distance or within L plus M, then you can use that to reach the enemy target, but you cannot move them. So that'll have to be, you have to think carefully about that. Make sure you don't want to move them. Oh, I didn't do across the top. Let's go to top. Men-at-Arms, activation a hero or Hearthguard, yeah. Courtiers is activate unit of warriors, yeah. And then missile troops activate a unit of levies, which would be the crossbowmen. Then we've got the normal combat bonus and activation pool. Right, so that's it, guys. It went on a little bit longer than I thought it would do. I started waffling, as I normally do, as you know. But it gives you a pretty good insight of the book, the new book, and how it's going to work out. It looks pretty good to me. I think they've done a really good job. But we'll soon find out tomorrow, won't we, when Graham takes me on. And I'm sure it's going to be a good game. We'll probably both make mistakes. We'll probably make errors of how we should use the board. But there's only one way to find out. And it'd be interesting to see what the final result is. So because I won't record the games, you can't have 2 people recording at the same time. Graham's better at recording Saga than me. He'll put it on his channel, which I'll leave the link below, because I'll try and edit this tonight and put it on tonight if I can. And then tomorrow we play the game. It'll be another, probably up to a week before he manages to finally put his on his channel, because he has to edit it, etc. But as soon as I've got the link to the game, I'll put it down below in notes, and you can watch the game, see how we get on. Right, that's it for me, guys. Enjoy your wargaming. I'll see you soon.